One man, three uniforms, one world war. In the annals of military history, countless stories emerge of valor, sacrifice, and survival, but very few are as bewildering, no, as incredible, as the story of Yang Kyoungjong, a Korean man who, during the Second World War, fought for not one, not two, but three different armies, each from opposing sides of the global conflict. Imagine being conscripted by the Japanese, then captured and forced to fight for the Soviets, then captured again and pressed into the ranks of the German Wehrmacht, only to be captured a third time by American paratroopers on the beaches of Normandy. Is this the plot of a forgotten war epic, a dramatized Netflix series? No, this is a true story, or at least, one so strange and mysterious that historians are still debating its details. In today's episode, we're diving deep into one of the most bizarre, ironic, and tragic tales of World War II. You'll meet the man who, without ever choosing a side, became a pawn on three different fronts in the bloodiest war in human history. If you're a history buff who loves immersive storytelling, strange facts, and real-life drama that sounds stranger than fiction, you're in for a ride. Grab your canteen and steel helmet. We're stepping into the shoes of Yang Kyoungjong. Welcome to War and Peace, where history isn't just told, it's relived. Chapter 1. The Forgotten Korean Youth. Yang Kyoungjong was born in 1920 in what is now North Korea, though at the time Korea was under brutal Japanese colonial rule. For decades, Japan had treated Korea as a resource to be mined, a people to be subjugated. Korean identity was suppressed, names were changed, dissent was crushed. As a young man, Yang likely had little choice in his future. In 1938, at just 18 years old, he was forcibly conscripted into the Kwantung Army, Japan's elite military force stationed in Manchuria. He wasn't alone. Thousands of Koreans were pressed into service for the Japanese Empire, their loyalty assumed, their consent ignored. For Yang, this was the first step into a war that would consume the globe and his life. But things took a dark turn quickly. In 1939, Japan clashed with the Soviet Union in the Battle of Khalkhin Gol, a fierce, undeclared war on the Mongolian frontier. There, Yang, still barely an adult, found himself in the middle of a meat grinder. The Soviets, led by none other than General Georgy Zhukov, outmaneuvered and overwhelmed the Japanese. Tens of thousands died. Thousands more were captured, including Yang. At this point, his life could have ended, but instead it took another bizarre twist. Chapter 2. Stalin's Army and the Eastern Front, 1938 to 1943. Captured by the Soviets, Yang Kyoungjong was thrown into a gulag, the infamous Soviet labor camp system. Here, survival was not guaranteed. Starvation, disease, and violence were common. But Yang survived. How? We may never know. But after years in captivity, the Soviets decided they needed bodies more than prisoners. With Operation Barbarossa, Hitler's massive invasion of the USSR in 1941, the Soviets were desperate. Their losses were catastrophic. In response, they began forcing POWs, including foreign nationals, into the Red Army. Yang, who had once fought for Japan against the Soviets, was now drafted into Stalin's army and sent to the Eastern Front. It was the ultimate irony and a chilling testament to wartime pragmatism. No longer a prisoner, but not quite free, Yang now fought under the hammer and sickle. The Eastern Front was hell on earth. Cities like Stalingrad and Kursk saw unimaginable bloodshed. Yang's unit was likely thrown into these grinder battles with little training and little care for survival. In 1943, during one such engagement, perhaps in Ukraine or Belarus, Yang's Soviet unit was overwhelmed by Nazi forces, and he was taken prisoner. Once again, Yang's war could have ended there, but once again, fate had other plans. Fighting for Hitler, 1943 to 1944. The Nazis, unlike the Soviets, didn't trust foreign soldiers, at least not at first. But by 1943, with their eastern armies bleeding out, they too began conscripting POWs into Ostbattalions. units made up of non-German recruits. These battalions were given the worst weapons, the least training, and were stationed in areas where the German command hoped they wouldn't defect. Yang, now likely exhausted, traumatized, and with no sense of belonging, was assigned to one such Ostbattalion. And in 1944, he was transferred to France, specifically to the beaches of Normandy. It's almost poetic. A Korean man, taken from the Japanese army, absorbed into the Soviets, and now defending Nazi-occupied France from the Americans. He wasn't alone. Historians believe thousands of Soviet prisoners served in German units stationed along the Atlantic Wall. But the Allies were coming. On June 6, 1944, D-Day, Operation Overlord began. Waves of American, British, and Canadian forces landed on the beaches. At Utah Beach, American paratroopers pushed inland. They encountered something unexpected. Among the captured German soldiers was an Asian man in Wehrmacht gear. They were stunned. Who was he? Japanese? Chinese? A spy? The man didn't speak German or English. Eventually, with the help of interpreters, they uncovered the truth. His name was Yang Kyoungjong. D-Day and American capture, 1944. The Americans were understandably baffled. Here was a man they had found fighting for the Nazis, who turned out to be Korean, who had been conscripted by the Soviets, who had originally served in the Japanese army. In the chaos of war, his story felt almost impossible to verify. But they didn't execute him. Instead, he was sent to a POW camp in the United Kingdom, and later transferred to Camp Gettysburg in Pennsylvania. There, he spent the rest of the war, no longer fighting, no longer switching sides, just a man in limbo. The U.S. government, unsure what to do with him, kept him interned until the war ended in 1945, and then he vanished from public record. Post-war and disappearance, 1945 to 1992. After the war, Yang Kyoungjong reportedly chose not to return to Korea, which had just been split into North and South. Repatriation might have meant imprisonment or worse, especially with his mixed military record. Instead, he emigrated to the United States. He reportedly settled in Illinois, living a quiet, anonymous life. He never gave interviews. He never published a memoir. He never tried to profit from his story. In 1992, he died, a mystery to most. To this day, no official government records fully corroborate every detail of his journey. But his story lives on. Glor, fact, warning. The legend and the questions, 1992 to today. Was Yang Kyoungjong real? Some skeptics argue that the story was exaggerated or misinterpreted. The iconic photo of an Asian-looking soldier in German uniform captured at Normandy is often cited as proof, but its subject is not definitively identified. Still, multiple accounts from American soldiers, as well as documents from POW camps, mention the presence of an Asian man captured in Normandy. In 2005, a South Korean film titled My Way dramatized his life, turning Yang into a war-epic anti-hero. The film played fast and loose with facts, but it reignited global interest in his story. Whether every detail is true or not, Yang Kyoungjong remains a symbol of war's absurdity, of history's blind momentum, and of how individual lives can be crushed and reshaped by the tides of empire. His story asks a haunting question. How much choice does a soldier really have? In the end, Yang Kyoungjong wasn't a hero, a traitor, or even a soldier in the traditional sense. He was a young man swept up by forces far beyond his control: colonialism, fascism, communism, and war. He didn't choose his path. It was chosen for him 3 times over. His story isn't just strange, it's a warning. It reminds us that history isn't always made by generals and presidents. Sometimes, it's shaped by the forgotten, the displaced, the anonymous men trapped in other people's wars. If you found Yang's journey as fascinating and tragic as we did, make sure to like this video, leave a comment about the part that stunned you the most, and subscribe for more immersive stories from the past. Join our growing community of history lovers who crave the untold, the unusual, and the unforgettable. And remember, history isn't just dates and battles. It's the human stories in between. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay curious.